and welcome to the emergency exit. Today we're gonna go ahead and look at some Am I the A-hole on Reddit in terms of retail. Something I have lots of experience about, working in a grocery store for 6 years. And then prior to that, probably another 4 years of other retail service. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Am I the a-hole for buying a dress from a fashion retailer my brother was sacked from? I very rarely treated myself to clothes, but I saw a dress online and fell in love with it. So I bought it for my birthday. My brother worked for them as a fashion buyer and was sacked last year. One of the reasons given for his behaviors. He was devastated as he didn't see it coming. He moved his life from one end of the country to the capital and worked hard. I did everything I could to support him. He doesn't accept the reason that they gave and said it was a ploy to replace him with a cheaper assistant buyer to save money. My family came around for a meal to celebrate my birthday, and as soon as they saw the dress, everyone said how pretty it was. They asked where it was from, and I dodged the question, saying it was from an online store. Eventually, when pressed, I said where it was from. My brother was and still is very angry. He says it's betrayal and is let down that I would give them my money. My mother is equally upset and said of all the retailers I could have picked somewhere else to shop. I couldn't find the dress anywhere else and I wouldn't have bought it there if it could have been avoided. Am I the a-hole? Should I have been more sensitive and supportive? Let's read some of the comments. It says, not the a-hole. You had no part in his actions getting him sacked, and it sounds like he isn't taking ownership of the reason why he got sacked. Your mother is enabling his behavior by siding with him. Alternatively, you could lie and say it was from a thrift shop. However, I don't believe you owe your brother anything. It's fair. Regardless of whether your brother deserved to lose his job or not, you knew his feelings and your family's about his former employer when you bought the dress and wore the dress in front of them. You're the a-hole for not being more sensitive and finding something else in the closet that day, or coming up with a white lie about its origins. I will say they bring up a good point. Why wouldn't you just wear a different one? But there's gonna be a point where you're not gonna think about it and you're just gonna wear it. And yeah, you like that dress and it was meant for your birthday. People shouldn't be so butthurt on that. I get it, it hurt him, but it wasn't the end of the world. I don't think anyone should be that angry about it. But if you could guess from overall, Reddit has deemed them not the a-hole. I need you to do me a favor here. Subscribe. Am I the a-hole for being mad at my roommate for not attending my grandma's funeral? This is a little bit of a long one. My 95-year-old grandma just passed away last week, and we have her wake today and her funeral tomorrow. I currently live with 3 female roommates and consider them my closest friends. I've known all my roommates for about 4 years. I get along with everyone pretty well except for one, who we'll call Kay. Kay is my age, black. I don't know what that will have to do with it, but we'll see. And I've probably known her for the longest. She and I used to work at a retail store before living together, but weren't very close. Kay recently has been keeping to herself. She pays rent on time, but is usually never home and spends most of her time with her boyfriend. This bothers me a bit because I miss her, but I understand because her and her boyfriend have been together for 4 years. My grandma died last week Monday, and when I texted everyone in our group chat, they were all very kind and expressed their condolences, but Kay took forever to respond, which peeved me a bit. That same day while we were at dinner, I asked Kay if she could come to the funeral on Tuesday next week, and she looked angry but said she would let me know later. After dinner, she texted me saying she couldn't come to the funeral because it was during her work hours. She explained since she's an intern, she can't take time off randomly because she wants to impress them and receive a full-time offer. She also said she felt uncomfortable going because she didn't know my grandma at all and felt it was disrespectful to go. She said she would come to the wake since it was after work, but I told her not to bother and haven't spoken to her since. My therapist said I should apologize to her, but I disagree. My other roommates are going to the funeral and have only met my grandma once. TLDR, roommate won't go to my grandma's funeral because it's during her work hours, and since she didn't know my grandma at all. I don't think she has an obligation. She said she's gonna be there for you. And as long as she's there in some way, if she can't make it, she can't make it. I understand she doesn't know that person. And it'd be hard for her to talk to an employer, especially in this day and age. But there are updates. I apologize for my late response. I was at the wake all day yesterday. I see your responses and I understand that I have overreacted with Kay. I mentioned Kay's race because I figured that would be a potential factor for her distancing herself from me and my other roommates. Why? Hang on, I'll read the rest of that in a second, but there's no reason for that. That's absolutely just dumb. What does her being black have to do with anything? Because guess what? It does not. There's nothing it has to do with. So I don't know. But let's continue here. We were all white except her, and I thought she may feel different being the minority in the house. If she was close to your grandma, I'm sure she would have gone, but she's not, and she wants to be there for you. So for me, this is a moot point. You know, I'm sure she would have gone if she had the availability. She's not distancing herself because she's black. She might be growing apart just generally, which happens. That's fair. I'm not racist, and I think you are all being a bit dramatic about that. I would never be racist to Kay, and we have all made her feel very welcome in our house. I'll say this here. She probably wasn't intentionally being racist, but it is definitely a little bit racist. The story didn't matter on her race. I'm not saying you're being blatantly racist, but you're definitely not being considerate, and you are being a little bit ignorant for sure.
No, they're ignorant. That's ignorant.
Anyways, Kay actually showed up to the wake for a few minutes, and I apologized to her for my behavior, but told her I didn't want to discuss her reasons for pulling away from us in the house. At least she apologized here. And look, Kay actually showed up to something when you told her not to come. She knew it was important. She's a good friend. And yeah, you're an a-hole. And I get you were hurt, but that's not fair to beat her up too. She explained that I felt I was too needy and emotionally dependent on other people, and it was tiring because she already has a lot to deal with. Fair. I recently was dumped by my boyfriend of 2 years, so I admit I had been crying a lot and asking for support from my roommate/sister. Kay also said she didn't like how I reacted to my friends with benefits, who I also invited to the wake, but he also declined. It's a friends with benefits. That's relationship stuff. You're there for sex. You're not there to be the shoulder to cry on. I apologized for my behavior, and she left shortly after that. I realized I need to listen to my therapist and work on myself, which I will try moving forward. Kay will not be attending the funeral, and I told my other roommates they didn't have to come either to take the pressure off. I have my sister and my mom here to lean on for support. She's going through a hard time. She overreacted and took it out on the wrong person. That being said, she's definitely in the wrong, but let's see what other comments have to say. One just says, I see why Kay rarely hangs out at the house. Oh yes, and the angry sexy black girl was probably rolling her neck and smacking her lips when she said she wouldn't go to the funeral. Again, I don't think that was necessarily her intent, but she definitely put that there, and it was definitely wrong to add that information. And yes, they dubbed her as the a-hole.
Epic fail.
That one shouldn't be in there for retail, by the way. Would I be the a-hole if I quit my retail job after the first day? Probably not. Essentially, the manager I ended up working with is extremely rude and condescending. Strike one. Throughout the entire shift, they were telling me that I was doing everything wrong and it's an extremely easy job. BS, teach them, don't berate them. That there are union rules for pace of work that I need to meet. But when told to finish the task during their lunch, their response was, don't worry, I'll be back well before you finish. Despite the task length being only 1/5 of the hourly pace. The above is easy enough for me to ignore, but afterwards, they were asking what I did before, and due to recent family complications, I moved back to my hometown to help out with family. And I'm in the interim of getting a new job in my field. But to keep income flowing, I decided to get this retail job in the meantime. I told them that I moved back due to family and I previously worked in the X field. They said, wow, I guess you weren't very good at your job. Why company name though? Their response really shocked me and put me in a depressed mood, which this was ultimately the worst part of the entire shift. And honestly, going back to work and train with them in the coming days just makes me want to end it. Would I be the a-hole for just quitting? I'm sorry, but people should not make you feel like crap because you don't know people's situations in life. I mean, sometimes you have to do stuff to get by. And it might be temporary. It doesn't mean you're bad at your previous job, and they don't know. And she even said there was family reason. Let's see what the comments have to say. Toxic worker environment, just run, may be helpful to upper management if you inform them of why you left so they can improve. Maybe, let's be honest, they're having a hard enough time keeping people that they'll leave the people in power. There's jobs I had where there was sexual harassment going on and things like that. And the higher ups just get moved to different stores so they don't have to deal with it at that one store. Power keeps power, and that's the problem sometimes. They usually only let those people go if there's like violence involved. Not the a-hole. Don't work where you don't feel appreciated and comfortable. There are tons of jobs otherwise, so don't take their BS. Not the a-hole. Wow, you would think with the labor shortage, a manager would try harder not to scare workers off. Normally I would say to put your 2 weeks in, but it doesn't sound worth it with a boss like this. I agree. I would start looking for something else immediately. I would also write an email to the regional manager or corporate about this manager's behavior to hopefully spare someone else this trouble in the future. Maybe even ask the manager directly for the regional manager's contact info. That might scare her, who knows? But you are definitely not obligated to stay in a hostile work environment. Clearly not the a-hole. Who cares? People need to treat other people with respect. That's the simple answer here. Not the a-hole. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to me ramble here. Do me a favor, go ahead and hit a like down below, comment, share this with your friends. If you like anything at all, I appreciate it. Thank you and have a good one.